Today's story takes us to Fair Lawn Cemetery in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Just to give you some of the backstory, it really begins with Robert and Charlie Ford. Now, they were close personal friends of Frank and Jesse James, and they were also outlaws in their gang. Now, they knew that there was a reward out for Jesse James, and they decided to collect on that reward. So one day in 1892, Robert shot Jesse James as he was dusting a picture on the wall. That very same day, both Robert and Charlie were indicted for murder, pled guilty for murder, sentenced to hang, and pardoned by the governor, all within just a few hours. Now, they weren't able to collect any reward money, and if they did, it was very little, but they ended up leaving the state of Missouri. Soon after, Charlie ended up contracting tuberculosis, got addicted to morphine, and ended up killing himself. Robert decided to start a new life out west, and he did so in Creede, Colorado in 1892, where he opened up a saloon/gambling establishment. 1 week later, it burned down along with a lot of the other businesses in downtown Creede, Colorado. He immediately opened a tent which had a new saloon and gambling tables in it. And that's where the subject of today's video comes into the picture. We're talking about Edward O Kelley. He also had a nickname, Red O Kelley. Sometimes they may spell his name differently, leave off that E towards the end of Kelley, or even leave off of the O, thinking that that was part of his middle name. But in 1892, when Robert, or Bob as he was known, had his new saloon in that tent, he walked in that tent and then called his name, Robert Ford, and got his attention, and he had a double-barrel shotgun with him in which he fired and hit Bob Ford in the neck, killing him. Now, Edward was thinking that he would be revered as a hero. Instead, he ended up getting convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. And he only served 9 years, and then he was paroled. Eventually, he came to Oklahoma City, and he was already sort of labeled as the man who killed Jesse James. In other words, he's the guy that killed Robert Ford, who is the guy that killed Jesse James. So he already kind of sort of had a name that carried with him. He was also hanging out in some of the slums where the bars were, some of the criminal activity that was going on, and the Oklahoma City police thought that he was the head of a gang here in Oklahoma City. He was just kind of seen rambling around in a trench coat, often toting guns underneath that trench coat. But there was an officer, and his name is Joseph Burnett, and he arrested him in December of 1903 on suspicion of a robbery. Now, he was turned loose, and then on January 13th, 1904, Edward O Kelley met Joseph Burnett on the streets of Oklahoma City. And Joseph Burnett knew who he was since he had previously arrested him, and acknowledged Mr. O Kelley. Immediately, O Kelley struck Officer Burnett and then tried to pull his pistol. It was at that time that the officer grabbed the hand that was trying to pull out the pistol, and there was kind of a scuffle in the streets for about 15 minutes. And there were shots that fired because O Kelley was able to pull his pistol out, and he unloaded all of those shots, but none of them hit the officer. They were kind of just fired up near his ear, which singed the officer's ear, caught some of the clothes of the officer on fire. And then at the same time, Edward was biting and just tearing apart the ears on the officer. Officer Burnett was calling out for help, and there were several bystanders that were just walking by, not wanting to help because they didn't know if he was an officer or what was going on. Eventually, it caught the attention of a baggage man that worked for the train station, and he came over and he grabbed Edward's arm, which freed up an arm for the officer, and he took out his pistol and then shot Edward twice. The deadly shot was in the temple of the head and killed Edward. And so then that was the death, January 13th, 1904. And he was laid to rest here in this cemetery, and it was unmarked for a long time. And then you can see this is kind of a newer marker, and it was placed here by the Oklahoma Outlaws Lawmen History Association. So he is now marked. The interesting thing is the officer is buried in this same exact cemetery. But if you want to find Edward O. Kelley, it's just kind of the back corner of this cemetery, about the northwest side. You can see there's houses over there and just this road and trees straight ahead. You can see a building right over there. Just to kind of give you a little bit of the surroundings here in case you want to find where he's at and come pay him a visit. It's right here. So this is the grave of Officer Burnett, who shot Edward O. Kelley. And he died in 1917 from complications of a stroke that he had. And he stayed with the Oklahoma City Police Department after the incident with O. Kelley. In fact, he became captain of the Oklahoma City Police Department and even assistant chief of police. He was right underneath the chief of police, one of the most famous marshals of his time, Bill Tillman. But anyways, he is buried almost parallel to where Edward Kelley is. In fact, it's walking distance about right in through there. Almost parallel, he's right here. So they had a connection with each other in 1903 and 1904, but they have a connection here in the cemetery, both with their actions, but also where they're buried in close proximity. And if you want to find it, it's, like I said, still relatively in the same area. It's right off of this little road that's jetting through here. And you can also notice there is a large church up there. And then kind of the cemetery office is right over there. He's right here if you want to come in the cemetery and pay your respect. So a couple other little facts about today's topic is that all of these men are from Missouri. They all came from Missouri. Officer Burnett, O. Kelley, the Ford brothers, the James brothers, they're all from Missouri. So I find that interesting. Another interesting fact is that O. Kelley, who's buried right over there, his body went unclaimed. In fact, it sat at the morgue for 2 weeks. And then eventually, the citizens of Oklahoma County paid for the casket and the burial. So anyways, I appreciate you guys watching these videos. If you like things like this, please subscribe. If you like the story today, hit the thumbs up for me. It helps out a lot. I enjoy going around finding all sorts of interesting stories, more of the obscure stories, and definitely anything to do with the Old West. So this is definitely the right channel if you like things like that. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.